Dear class, here we are in American national government talking about elitism and pluralism and also interest groups. We can't actually talk about elitism and pluralism as Robert Dahl proposes without talking about interest groups. Okay, so let's see. The research question we can pose is we want to understand what is right about the US democracy. Is it a pluralist system or is it an elitist system? So in this slide, we're actually going to do something of a public polling. We're going to try and understand how this class views the US government, whether it's a pluralist system or an elitist system. And yes, I can't see you. You're all in your homes or wherever you are, but I want you to participate virtually, okay? So what I would like is every time you see a question, I want you to sort of pick some answer and see where it goes, okay? So let's see. The first question is, how happy are you with the government? Very happy, so-so. It depends on the issue area, not at all. So if you were in my class, I would poll you right now to see, how whoever believes in very would put their hands up, so-so would put their hands up. It depends on the issue. So when you're looking at this, you do the polling at home, okay? Participate. How happy are you with the economic system in the US? One response is very, so-so, sometimes, not at all. Who can run for office in the US? So now we're looking at aspects of democracies, right? Anyone that wants to can run on, technically, or rather, there's no, if you imagine the rights, anyone has the right to run, right? Who can run? Anyone that wants to. How many people will raise their hand to this? Only the wealthy can afford to run. Money is an issue, right? You have to raise money to go around the country and talk to people and hold these rallies and whatnot, a lot of expenses. Only majority ethnic groups can run. So if you look at the candidates in the elections for president this time, you see the Republican Party, both are white men. And in the Democratic side, you have Kamala Harris, who is both Black and Indian American. And we see only one woman in the final ticket, right? And we have three men. If you consider both vice presidential and presidential people. Who can run for office in the US? Only men. For a long time, we've seen the presidents have just been men. And to this point, we haven't seen a women president. So think about it. Only educated people? That could be a response. I mean, have we ever had a president without a college degree? Only those of a certain age? Yes, I guess there is an minimum age to become president, right? And so this question can have a few correct answers, right? But these are also gauging our views on who can run for office, or rather, what do we know about who can run, who has the ability to run? The next question is who should run for office? So raise your hand if you think anyone who wants to, only the wealthy, only those with education, only those who can raise the money, only honest people, only people whose ideas I like. I mean, you see that there are many possibilities. Who actually runs for public office? So look at our readings and videos. You'll see that there's some data if you look at page 14 and 15 of American government, okay, so this is the source also for this page. Who actually runs for public office? 1/3 of US presidents have attended Ivy League schools, not even college, Ivy League schools. You know what those are, right? The very, very, very difficult, impossible to get into: Harvard, MIT, Columbia, University of Pennsylvania, what other? Yale. So those big names, right? Of the House of Representatives, 95% of the members have a bachelor's degree, as do 100% of the members of the Senate. Compared to the US, less than 40% of the US adult population have even an associate degree. Wow. So you see that those who actually run for public office disproportionately more educated than the US population. American Government 3E is the textbook, so that's the source for all of this information. The majority of the men and women in Congress also engaged in either state or local politics, were business people, or practiced law before being elected to Congress. So they are already very successful people to begin with. Approximately 73% of members of Congress are men, and about 76% are white. So that tells you that certain populations are able to run and end up winning, probably because of many factors, not just their race. But we see the outcome has something to do with race. Now, again, the source of the data is the same. As of 2009, half of the members of Congress were millionaires. Wow. Wealth really has something to do with this. 38% sent their children to private schools versus 11% of American households. That means the majority of Americans are attending public school. Wow. And 38% of the congressmen send their children to private schools. Now, are these expensive schools? We have all kinds of private schools. Some of them are charter schools, and you don't have to be super rich. You can get in by lottery, right? Some are faith-based and charter as well. Flat tax. Let's look at your opinion of the tax system. Raise your hand if you think A, it takes a fixed amount from everyone's income, say $3,000. Okay, so a flat tax, does it take a fixed amount? B, it takes a fixed percentage from all household incomes, say 10%. C, it is about flattening the salaries of people who make more. D, all of the above. So here I'm kind of testing your knowledge of the book in a way, right? Because it talks about taxes. Okay, who is elected matters. Why? A, raise your hand if you think it impacts our lives. B, it has no impact. C, it's hard to measure the impact. Now, here we are. A, everyone very, very proactive in their democracy. Maybe they think elections matter. B, it has no impact. These people have become more skeptical of the system. C, it's hard to measure the impact. okay, so these are the realistic folks, and they think that government is somehow very opaque and closed, or maybe they haven't really paid much attention to the measurement process. D, I don't really know if they are accountable, if the people are accountable, right? E, I'm following the politics on key issues, I'm involved. So all kinds of people are voters, right? People who believe in the system and people who think it's not happening for them, they just don't care anymore. See people who are kind of like, okay, I'm electing somebody, I really don't know if they're going to make a difference, right? And so different kinds of attitudes. So chapter 1 also looks at political engagement. So I would say not involvement, but engagement, perhaps. So one type of political engagement is sort of, sit back in your couch after work and watch the news, right? I follow the news. I follow some policies. B is I follow some policies. Wow. You actually read up on policies and you follow them? That's a degree higher, right? I'm attuned to the political climate. I know about the policies. C, I follow the news and some policies, and I'm attending regular meetings of the local chapter of, say, the NRA here. Okay, so that means you're really getting involved in some kind of political activity here. And it's not about just party politics. You could be involved in party politics, but here you have taken a stand on the Second Amendment, right? And you're exercising that. So D, I pay my dues to the NRA. I'm not just going to meetings, but I've actually become a card carrying member. So E, I attend congressional meetings on gun control. Wow. I'm not just an NRA person. Now I'm attending gun control meetings at the Congress, right? F, I'm against gun control. I educate local people about it. So now you become a local spokesperson or a leader or educator on this issue. And the last option, G, I am for gun control. I educate people about it. And so you're involved both either as a pro-gun person or as somebody who is pro-gun control, right? So you see different types of levels of engagement, political engagement, right? So the question to you is, do you belong to interest groups? And I kept it empty here because I don't know if you do. Lastly, who does a public official serve? How many of us think that they serve all constituents? Raise your hand. If you think all the major donors who finance their election, is that who the public official serves first? Maybe. C, major interest groups that bother the official all the time. So maybe people give money to the official, but they kind of don't bother them after that point, right? But what if I gave money to a senator and then I call them once they get elected, and then I keep bothering them until they do me a favor, right? And so then, of course, they're going to serve that person, right? If you keep bothering and saying, I'm not going to finance your second election or your re-election, then yes, they're going to start serving that person. D, the interest groups that get local people excited about issues that might split the vote. For example, gun control people, all the moms, and there are many organizations like that, Moms for Gun Control. They might be, doing petitioning outside the senator's office, or maybe his house, and they get the public excited about the issue. There's media coverage and it just sort of blows out of proportion, but you know what I mean. Then there's constant pressure to appease these kinds of people, right? And so the public official might have to appease these people by doing certain things. So these are the types of people that get served. E, who their party wants to serve. So maybe the senator belongs to a political party and the political party has policies about gun issues, right? And so the Republicans tend to be pro-gun and uh, the Democrats tend to be pro-gun control. And so they might be divided on issues, and maybe the senator has no choice. Even if he wants to support something, his party said no. F, ultimately, the official must serve all, but is never able to, right? I mean, they want to do as much as they can, but probably never able to. G, officials are not within public reach. They don't serve anyone except themselves. So the G is sort of like the G people have totally lost interest in politics. They've given up and they think that it's impossible. I mean, the senator might meet the local people at different dinners and gatherings and all kinds of stuff. But at the end of the day, they'll vote the way they want to vote, right? And that may have nothing to do with the public. My issue advocacy group. So this again gauges your level of civic engagement, because this lecture is, talking about those issues, right? So A option is my issue advocacy group is just me and a few people. Maybe it's something you're doing in your neighborhood. You've decided to raise awareness about trees, right? So people lost trees in the tornado, and you think, let's just go and plant some trees where we can. Maybe you go house to house and you give people some trees and you say, hey, can I dig some trees up here? I'd like to plant some trees here. Okay, B is it's many of us organized locally. So you got involved in a group, but it's a kind of a larger group now. C, it's a national group. You became a member of a national group. D, it's a national group and I have no clue what they're doing. I just pay a membership fee and look at their website sometimes. So it's some group that you become part of. For example, you might be helping a certain kind of nonprofit. You might be paying some membership fee to them or some kind of donations on an annual basis. You might check their website once in a while, but beyond that, you don't do anything. E, we have legal teams to lobby Congress and state legislators when there's a bill on the table that might affect our rights. So here you've become completely invested in legislation and you have legal teams to lobby Congress and state legislators, okay? So every time they put a bill, you're watching what they're doing. F, we use membership fees to pay for our activities. So you collected some money and you've actually started to finance your activities using membership. That may or may not be a political organization, right? G, we rely on donations. So different kind of financing options. Ultimately, what are we talking about? Why ask these questions? So it's a type of political polling, and we'll talk about public polling more. But this is how it happens, right? You ask people how they think, and then you kind of uh, put them into groups sometimes. Sometimes you might interview people and they will talk for hours and hours, and then you'll sort of say, oh, this guy, he's one of those people that lobbies Congress. They have lawyers. So this is like a group, a particular type. It's the type E. But other times you might actually have an online poll and people just choose particular things. just like I'm offering you here a list, right? Why do we do that? Why do we poll the public? We're asking you essentially how you feel about the democracy. Do you think it works for you? Do you think that it works for rich people? And how does it work, right? And why are you engaged in certain things and not in other things, right? Why are you paying membership fees at, say, St. Jude's, or maybe you're making donations to St. Jude's? Why are you a card-carrying member of the NRA? Why are you lobbying Congress on gun control? I mean, these are many issues. Why do you choose to do what you do, right? These tell us something about our faith in the system. Either we think the system is working and we use the means available to us, or we think the system is not working, it works for some people, but not for others, right? This is essentially what elite theory and pluralism are debating. Those who propose elite theory will say that the democracy, it's set up in a particular way. It's really not working for everybody. It's just the rich people who are being served, you know? And Robert Dahl, people who are pluralists will say, no, actually, there's a way for everybody to have a say. At the end of the day, money might win, but there are ways for you to get involved, okay? So let's check this out. So where exactly is it that we're getting involved, right? So that's called the policy process. So one step is policy framing, where all these legislators decide how the bill gets worded, right? That's when you have to send your or make your input. So if you're an interest group, such as a pro gun control person, and you think, you know, you're rounding up, say, 1,000 people in your group, you can afford a lawyer. So those people are going to lobby Congress or the state legislature at the policy framing process and say, guess what? You need to put in something about gun control in this bill, right? So they are taking some measures to bother the congressmen and women and the senators or the state legislatures, and they're disturbing them. They're telling them, look, if you do this, maybe I make a campaign contribution next time you run for election, or maybe I scratch your back in another way. Maybe I do you a favor in some way or the other, right? So there's all kinds of things going on here. But that's one of the steps. Policy implementation is another process. Here, the policy has already been set. It has to be implemented by bureaucrats. Wow, that's a whole other branch of government that we hardly talk about. We act as though bureaucrats have no power, right? We act as though they just sit there and do some paperwork for us. But bureaucrats are in charge of implementation. They're the ones who are going to distribute the money to different branches, right? So they actually control the purse. So policy implementation is another place where a lot of politics happens, right? So you might call the federal, let's see, agency in charge of environmental regulation, right? The EPA, say. And your company might be one of those companies that the EPA is trying to bring under particular types of regulation. For example, you might be producing chemicals that harm the soil. So your chemicals are being dumped into rivers and then being circulated through irrigation into fields. And we find that that water is then collecting and seeping into the soil, but also there's runoff. So the EPA is looking at your company and saying, no, these guys, they need to reduce their pollution level, water pollution, land pollution, because they're killing off this river here. So you may go to those bureaucrats and say, guess what? I heard that you guys are trying to give money to groups that do research on soil pollution levels or water pollution levels. How much money are you giving to them? So, in many ways, the chemical companies might be sort of interacting, maybe inappropriately, with the bureaucrats and trying to influence what they do, right? They might go to the different agencies that are doing the work and start giving them money to suppress research that is critical of their company, right? So all kinds of politics goes on. So Robert Dahl is essentially saying interest groups work. They can lobby the state and Congress, state officials and Congress. They can, policies are framed by bargaining and trade-offs. So, just these legislators in Congress and at the state legislatures don't just, float a bill and everyone just starts accepting it, but they fight it tooth and nail if they disagree with things, right? So pluralism is saying, look, policy is very much a competitive process. The process is fair and open. So Robert Dahl initially suggested that the policy process is fair and open. Records might be kept, accountability, there's processes to be accountable. And elite theory, C. Wright Mills and others would suggest that issue groups are actually irrelevant to the policymaking process. Who makes the decisions at all points of the policy process? It's really those at the higher levels of government or society. And the voters are just like for show, right? I mean, it's just a form of appeasement. I mean, if you told the voters that they really have no power, they might riot, right? They might take over government. And so you have to appease the people by giving them all this rights, right? All right, so let's stop here and then come back to uh, other things. Make sure you all look at the videos, do the readings, and let's talk more later.